right, we are recording. Melanie Ryan, welcome back to the Terrain Theory Podcast.
Thank you. I'm very happy to be here 3 years later.
3 years later, and as we were recollecting, it was the spring equinox the last time you were on. Now it's the full moon. We've got an eclipse. And what was your comment? It's still a what?
Yeah, it was equinox of 2023 that I was on, and now it's the full moon and eclipse of 2026. And I said, and it's still a shit show. We're still in it.
We're still in it. We're still in it. We can't avoid it. I guess maybe that's the point, right? Don't avoid it. Face, feel, and heal, as Paula said. Melanie, it has been 3 years, and a lot's happened in your life. And you reached out because you wanted to share a little bit updates on your journey, what you've been through, your loss, and also how the terrain model really played into how you moved through that and integrated it. So I'm going to turn it over to you and catch us up on what's happened in your life.
Yeah, and feel free to stop me because I can go on and on. And so spring equinox of 2023, I was on and talking about trauma, talking about triggers and trauma, and we can talk about that more later if you want. But what happened actually was, something that I never in a million years would have expected. I've been a trauma therapist for 30 years. And I've gone through my own trauma, in my life, but I never expected, for the biggest trauma that they say is the biggest trauma is child loss, and my only child. So that was like a huge shift that was completely unexpected because our son, Justin, he was our only child, and, he was a terrain child. I didn't initially, when I was pregnant, that was kind of my time when I started questioning things because I did not grow up in holistic medicine. And I did vaccinate him just a little bit. Like I was coming out of that paradigm. And a few years before getting pregnant, I took like a yoga teacher training, and I found a holistic pediatrician through a friend of mine who had gone through that yoga teacher training, and started to question and wake up from, the paradigm that I was brought up in, which most of us were brought up in. And I mean, I was fully vaccinated and, you know, brought up on Pepsi and Doritos. So still healing from that. But my son was, I was kind of in tune when I was pregnant, and, ate fairly healthy while pregnant. But I did vaccinate him a little bit, and he had a reaction to a vaccine when he was, well, actually, I should back up. His first reaction was really when he was 2 months old. But the real bigger reaction was when he was 5. And he had only had like a handful of vaccines, and I never combined any of them. And that last vaccine, I actually didn't want to do it and was coerced by the pediatrician. And that reaction, he had like hives down his whole arm. And I just said to my husband, that's it, no more. And I even promised Justin, he was 5 years old, and I said, you will never have another vaccine again. And, I'm sharing this because it was part of the awakening for me. And we actually met Dr. Marisol Arce because of that. So here's where I start to kind of come into everything happens for a reason, and how what happens to us is actually happening for us, and it's leading us to a certain path, and it's leading us to wisdom. And my son was huge with bringing me to a path of wisdom in like every aspect of his being in this body on this planet. It seemed like everything about him was about awakening me and my husband. So through him and through these kind of, traumatic experiences, I've met people like Dr. Marisol Arce, and I've studied naturopathic medicine with her like very closely. But also another terrain doctor, I guess you would call him is a Tibetan medicine doctor named Dr. Nida Chenetsang. And he is the lineage holder of a Tibetan medicine, which goes back, 2,500 years in Tibet and the Himalaya area. And that uh, body of medicine, that school of medicine, is called Sowa Rigpa. And Sowa means science of healing, and Rigpa means wisdom or awareness. And I actually met Dr. Nita because of my son. After Justin passed, I felt very strongly about going to Bhutan, which is this little tiny country, next to India, and it's known as the happiest country in the world, actually, because they're a Buddhist country and they study death and dying. And through studying death, they actually have an appreciation for life. So, just to back up a little bit, because in the last 3 years, there's been a lot of change, and I've been studying Sowa Rigpa and traveling all around following Dr. Nita, who's a nomad. And he's popping up all of these schools, all over the world. I've also studied metaphysics, and I'm about to actually get my master's in metaphysics. So I just kind of want to bring the audience up to speed in, what's happened since my son has passed and because he passed. But to go back to what happened with his death and why I want to share, because I feel like there's so much to learn from this on so many levels about the terrain model, about how we view the terrain model, right? And what is terrain really all about? It really helped me on the physical level. In this part of the world, we think of the terrain as the body, right? It's what we're living in here. And when Justin passed, there was a lot of mystery around what happened. Like, what was the cause of his physical death? And what happened was he went paralyzed from the waist down, like suddenly. We were thankfully at home. My husband, who works out every day, unlike me, I'm not, yeah, he's lifting weights in the garage, and Justin would work out with him. And Justin was a second degree black belt in Taekwondo and actually had just been promoted to an instructor in his dojang, which was awarded the #1 school in New York State. So he was very dedicated. He was someone who was really lived a life of discipline and spirituality. And so he was working out in the garage, typical workout. They were just warming up. And Justin said, I don't feel very good. And he came up to go to the bathroom, in the bathroom off the kitchen. And he was there for a while. And, my husband comes up, knocks on the door, are you okay? And Justin's like, yeah, just not feeling good. Okay. My husband goes back down, comes back up, like 5-10 minutes later, like, Justin, what's going on? And Justin very calmly just said, I can't feel my legs. And we didn't make a big deal about it because he wasn't panicking. And I heard him in the living room, and I was like, oh, well, you've been sitting on the toilet for a while. Maybe your legs fell asleep, just rub your thighs and, stand up. And he just was in there. And then finally, my husband, he got triggered. There was a switch in my husband that all of a sudden he went into a panic, and he starts banging on the bathroom door, like, Justin, open the door. And Justin wasn't opening the door. And then it was like escalating. And so he opens the door and finds, Justin's like on the floor. And he grabs him and puts Justin's arms around my husband's neck. My son's now 6'1". He had grown like 12 inches in a year and a half. All that raw milk, and he was homeschooled, and he got to sleep whenever he wanted to. He had zero stress, and he just shot up. Keep that in the back of your mind, because that plays a part of this. So drags him into the living room, and we start FaceTiming with Dr. Arce. Now, Marizel had become like our best friend. We traveled together all through the pandemic Justin considered her a friend, like a family member. She was teaching him how to make gluten-free Christmas cookies. Like I've got great pictures of them in my kitchen. She's rolling the dough, and they were just like two peas in a pod. And like I said earlier, I met her because of him, right? Because of he had a reaction to a vaccine when he was 5. So now fast forward, he's 12, 13, 12 in 2020. He was born 2008, so he was 12. So so she's, not one to say to go to the hospital, right? Like none of us want to go to a hospital, like ever, let alone like even a doctor's office, right? We treat ourselves, and if anything ever went wrong, we would just be on the phone with Marisol, Dr. Arce. So she used to be an EMT for many years. And so and my husband is a Marine, and he's trained, he's saved many lives. And so we were starting to realize that, something bigger was going on here. It wasn't just like maybe he, his spine went out when he was lifting a weight. Like that was our first thing, was like maybe he just pulled his back. Marisol says, you got to call an ambulance. And I was like, what? Kind of like, wait, what is going on? And so long story short, we go into the emergency room, and actually Marisol, Dr. Arce, comes to the emergency room. She meets us there. She's got her little, her daughter that was just her second daughter that was just born, carrying her. And thankfully she was there, because she understood things that on a medical level that I wouldn't have remembered, first of all, because I was in this whoa, like shock state. So first thing I told them, though, was that my son is highly sensitive to chemicals. And since that first reaction that I was talking about, that he was actually, I think, 2 months old, he had a vaccine when he was 2 months old, and suddenly he started reacting to lotion and shampoo, like anything unnatural that had any kind of chemical, his body would like just turn red and like on fire. So I'm telling, the ER doctors and nurses, I'm like, look, this is a kid who's like pure. Like he's allergic to Benadryl. He's allergic to penicillin. Like my grandmother died after having contrast dye. Like this is a highly sensitive kid. And they're talking about, they have to take him in for a CAT scan, a contrast dye CAT scan. And I'm like freaking out. Like, I'm like, he's going to die. Like I just always kind of had a knowing that my son could never have surgery, that he would just react to all of that. Because if he's reacting to the littlest things like soap and shampoo, right? So they end up, they have to do, we find out that he's internally bleeding. I can see it under his belly button. And just to back up, so this is November. This is actually December. I'm sorry. In October, so about 2 months earlier, he was in the New York State Taekwondo tournament. And they asked me in the emergency room, had he been in a car accident or a trauma to the stomach? Because there was blood pooling under his belly button. Mm. And they took him in, they did the contrast dye. We had to, because I saw blood starting to come out. And he had what was called an abdominal aortic dissection, which is your heart. Everyone thinks your heart is just up here, but your aorta is shaped like a candy cane, and it curls around and then comes down, and it goes all the way down to your belly button, and then it forks and brings blood to your legs. Now, he lost any blood flow to his legs, but also to his organs, because it also brings blood to the organs. So they're asking me, was he in a car accident? And I'm not thinking about what happened at the New York State Taekwondo tournament. He was in a sparring match, and he was actually kicked in the abdomen, and he went down. We didn't think anything of it. My husband's like, I played football. How many times I was hit in the stomach, no big deal. And he never complained about anything. So he was kicked in the stomach, and I completely forgot because it's almost 2 months later. So when they asked me in the emergency room, I'm like, no, we didn't have any trauma to the stomach. Like, no idea how this is happening. Right. But he did, it was October 21st, 2023. He was kicked in the stomach. He went down, and his opponent was actually 17. Now, Justin was 15. So he made a point to tell me, he's like, Mom, he was big. He was muscular. Like 2 years for a teenage boy makes a big difference. So it was a hard kick. He went down. He was asked if he wanted to continue. And if Justin's not a quitter, he's not going to say no. So he gets back up. He finishes the match. And he ends up winning the gold. He wins, like, not for sparring, but for his poomsae, which he was amazing at. It's the second time he won the New York State champion for that. So we get on a plane the next day. He gets kicked in the stomach. He's, not complaining about it. We had a trip to go to Greece the next day, and we're actually going to Greece to study ancient Greek dream incubation, which is used to heal PTSD among combat war veterans. And he was traveling with me with this world-renowned teacher and healer and Jungian analyst to do this dream incubation. And we found out that it was actually going to be filmed as a documentary. So Justin's in this documentary. And basically, like, it's his last journey. It's his last big hurrah, you could say. And we fly back. And then 7 weeks later is when the aneurysm, this whole thing manifests and bursts open. And we end up in the emergency room. And he has a 10-hour surgery. Now, during that surgery, of course, they're pumping him with all kinds of chemicals, right? So he comes out of that surgery. He goes into surgery on a Sunday night, December 17th, and then comes out of surgery after about 10 hours the next morning on the 18th. And they were trying to, there was a clot inside around the abdominal area so the trauma, the kick, actually created a bubble, which is an aneurysm. And people can walk around with an aneurysm. And then, he flew to Greece and flew back with all that and inflammation from flying, eating foods that you're not used to eating, then coming home, and he was doing jujitsu. His body was compensating and creating a clot. It's almost like a dam was breaking. And it was like the body, does what it does. It wants to heal itself. So it starts to plug the holes. So when they opened him for surgery, they said there was like this huge clot, and it was hard. And they said it looked like it had been there for weeks. And so this didn't make sense to anyone, because I said that he'd never had a trauma to his stomach. And I didn't remember it until months later, where Dr. Arce and I were kind of like hashing it out. First, we were like, was this from a vaccine? Like, what's going on? So with her magnificent mind and me remembering, oh, he was kicked in the stomach. And then she was like, when was that? And I was like, and we started to put the pieces. It was like, oh, kick to the stomach. And then why would that maybe happen to him and not someone else? Well, he grew that 12 inches. And she said growing that fast can cause like a thinning of the aortic wall. And then you have a kick, and then you have a flight, and then you have another flight, right? And so the clotting just was, the body doing what it was doing. And so I feel just so tremendously grateful to have someone in my life like Dr. Arce to put those pieces together. Because one of the things that can be so traumatic, especially in that kind of situation, is it's like you can get stuck on like, how did this happen?
Why?
Right? And you have like no sense of closure.
Yep.
So then he's got the emergency surgery. They couldn't get the blood flow back to his legs or his organs because the clotting, like, it was so hardened. And they were, 10 hours. They had 4 surgical teams. He had pediatric and adult surgeons because he was 15, but he was 6'1". I forget how many, 160, 170 pounds or something. But then you add on all the chemicals. And then they couldn't figure out why all his systems were just going bonkers, because now he's reacting to all the chemicals. And now, I mean, Dr. Arce, she's had the medical records. We got the medical records. I know I can't ever look at them. It's too hard for me, even though I have this like sort of medical mind. A part of me is curious, but like the mother is like, yeah, no, you can't look at that. But we did find, that he was given medications that he was actually even allergic to, right? And so I remember standing in the ICU. He came out of surgery completely on life support. And now when you go into a hospital, their motto, right? Death is a failure to them. So it's life over limb. So what they were telling us was actually more traumatic than anything else. They were telling us we're probably going to have to amputate his legs. We were like, what? Like, this is a gold medalist in Taekwondo. Like, all he does is kick, right? And, like, so he's just going to be living in a wheelchair. And then it was like, oh, and we might have to start removing, the bladder and the this and the that, and he's going to live with a bag. And like, it was like, oh my God, like, what are we doing here? And I'm just in shock. My husband was kind of starting to ask, like, what are we doing here? So the first surgery, he comes out on life support. They wheel him past us, and neither of us, my husband and I, were very spiritual and sensing presence. Like, neither of us felt like Justin was there anymore. And his body was very swollen from all of the chemicals, basically. And I remember the head surgeon coming in saying, like, we don't understand what's going on, because they see all these chemicals as medicine, you know? And so I knew what was going on. Marisol, Dr. Arce knew what was going on, and so finally, they gave his body time to rest, and they were going to try to attempt a second surgery. But, when they went in, he was, the head surgeon came and told us, like, everything was gone. Like, the organs did not receive any more blood flow, and they just couldn't stabilize him. So there's a lot to learn, from the physical perspective, right? Of how, when, even under emergency surgery, like most of us, we would never go to a doctor or like, the hospital unless it was an emergency. But even in emergency situations, right? When it's like you have no choice, which is what ended up for us, it's still the way the system is built, right? And, thankfully, like, they were open to some of the alternative, right? I was like, is there any way we could get some IV vitamin C going? Like, can we do anything natural here? Which they were fine. They were open to. But ultimately, what the other part of the terrain model that I wanted to share was, obviously we talk about the physical body, right? But I've been a Buddhist for 20 years. And in Buddhism, there's what's called the right view, which is everything is built from perspective, right? And so how do we see ourselves? Do we see ourselves just as a physical body? What do you guys think?
Absolutely not.
Right?
That's certainly how we're
So,
raised, though.
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, going back to what we were doing in Greece in October and November of 2023 was going back to, the Greek god Asclepios. He is the god of healing, And that form of healing back then in ancient Greece was very holistic, right? And Asclepios was known for having over 300 holistic health centers all throughout Europe. And you can go to them. I actually lead retreats to Greece. I have one coming up in June. And this is where, like, Hippocrates grew up in the Asclepian sanctuary. But Hippocrates moved away from the holistic view. The Asclepian sanctuary was full of naturopathic ways, both physical, but also energetic and spiritual. And what we were studying was the dream chamber, which is highly spiritual, where you would go into a dream chamber, you would sleep, and you would have a therapist, this is the origins of psychotherapy as well, and dream analysis in ancient Greece, was you would actually invoke a god or a goddess. Usually it would be Asclepios. You would invoke Asclepios to give you the medicine, the remedy, right? The origin of your illness. And it would come to you in a dream. And this also goes back to Tibetan medicine, dream yoga. And even the Mayans do it. Like, all over the world, this is done, where you can go to sleep and you can receive the wisdom, for what you need to heal. So I think it's very interesting that Justin's last journey was about that, right? So there's something there. Like I said earlier, he was always bringing me to wisdom, and it's like his whole life purpose was about bringing forth ancient wisdom. And so, I forgot where I was going with that, but so what is the terrain, right? So the terrain is more than just the physical body. It's our inner terrain of our mind. It's our psyche. It's our emotional body. It's our mental body. It's our spiritual body. So as a Buddhist, with this right view, which is the first of the Eightfold Path, we are infinite. We are energy beings that are infinite consciousness. So that means we don't necessarily get caught up in the physical. And why, when I did go crazy, like, why did this happen? What happened? And the terrain model did help me piece all of it together. But what the terrain model did even further to the next step was to start to look at my son's soul contracts. Like, why did he reincarnate? Why did he come in at this time? Why did he leave in such a way to make such a big impact? Which we were actually told, we have a psychic medium in the family from when my grandfather passed, which was funny. It was in 2008 when I was pregnant with Justin, my grandfather passed. And that really made me question. I was very close with my grandfather, and he shared these visions that he had with me as he was dying. He was seeing people, quote unquote, on the other side, even though there is no other side. But that opened a door for me. And like, after he passed, I was like, where is he now? Where is he now? Right. And I wanted to learn more. And I became a past life regression therapist, studied with Dr. Brian Weiss, who's an MD, a pioneer in past life regression therapy. And I've used that for many years to heal people it was very effective in helping heal people when they couldn't find healing in other ways, So, so we are infinite consciousness. And so the psychic medium said, first thing you need to know about Justin's death. Number one, there was nothing that you did to cause it. Number two, there was nothing you could do to stop it. And then this blew me away. He said he was supposed to die right away, but he was gifted an extra 24 hours so that people could come and be with him. And I was like no one knew, like what was going on, like for him to know something that specific, because he should have died December 17th, that Sunday. And then they did the surgery, and like I said, I didn't really feel like he came out. Like the body came out, but it was like Justin wasn't there. And so I said to my husband, how was that a gift? Because that was pretty traumatic 24 hours. And we were there and we got to be there and we got to be by his side when he came out of surgery. And I guess that's the gift, right? Is like you don't get the call where it's like he died on the table. It was like he came out, we got to read to him, we got to pray with him, and then we decided when to turn off all the machines and let him go. So in the end, it was a gift. At the time, I couldn't see like what was the gift, right? So the other part of the terrain that I think we all need to consider is that we are this infinite consciousness, right? And we do decide, we do choose when to come in, and we come in with gifts. Like I say to people, if you don't believe in reincarnation, which I respect other people's beliefs, and I didn't always believe, by the way. It was actually part of my grandfather's passing and becoming a past life regression therapist that I started to really wake up more and more. But I always question, like, take someone like Mozart, right? Mozart was composing masterpieces by the time he was 7 years old without being taught. Okay. So we have to question, right? Like, what are we coming in with and where is it coming from? Because a lot of people who lose a child or have had loss, they focus on the afterlife. Oh, like, where is he now?
Yeah.
Right. And I did that with my grandfather and I did that with my son. And Justin has come through in such a powerful, magical way from the afterlife that I'm writing a whole book about it. Because it's like off the charts. So, but as a past life regression therapist, I started to look at, well, but who was he before? And what did he come in with? Right. And he definitely came in with gifts, and we all come in with gifts. But one thing that I really saw manifest was the way he was so calm when everything unfolded. And even in the emergency room, Marisol Arce, she saw him there. And she told me later, she was like, out of all the years of being an EMT, I've never seen anyone so calm. Like he was peaceful, not responding or not reacting to anything going on. And it was like he knew. And he knew how to just surrender to death, which is, from a Buddhist perspective, very karmic. Karma, we come in with good karma and bad karma. Karma basically is like your habitual patterns, right? The more you think, if you think very negative, you're going to create negative. If you think very positive, you're going to create positive. So we're constantly creating negative karma or good karma based on our thoughts. That's why Buddhists focus so much on meditation and thinking positive. That's actually also part of the Eightfold Path, is to, right view, but also right speech, right action. It's always about creating positive, right? And working with transmuting the negative. So karmically, it would make sense if my son was a Buddhist in many lifetimes, which is what we were told. We were told that all of his previous lives were monastic. And he reincarnated in the West to actually help us, to bring this wisdom, right? So when it came time for him to die, it was like all of the memories from past lives and the wisdom of knowing how to surrender and not have any fear in the death process arose in him. Because I just still, to this day, I'm still like, wow, I don't know if I could be that calm, And so all the way up until they took him for surgery, and his last words were just, I asked him, I said, is there anything you want to tell us before you go into surgery? And I was very positive. I was like, you're going to be okay. Everything's, I was like, boom, like grounded, just I had to protect his peace, basically. And his last words were he just wanted me to tell his girlfriend how much he loves her. So, I mean, it's amazing. And what it can be like. There's such a fear of death. And this is the biggest shadow, by the way. This is my son has brought me to the ultimate shadow. I teach shadow work, and I teach about the golden shadow, right? So I'm here actually talking about the golden shadow of death, of what can be possible when we cut through materialism, like cutting through this view of who we think we are is just a body, right? To expand our view into the right view, into seeing ourselves as this infinite, eternal energy consciousness, right? So we never die. And when we're looking at why someone dies, yeah, I definitely feel like I'm so grateful I pieced it all together, right? But to go beyond that, to why was there a death? Why was there a soul agreement, right? And the psychic medium said Justin came in to make an impact. He actually didn't need to reincarnate, he said. He didn't have much to learn. He came to help humanity. And so how is he helping, right? It's like he's helping by I'm here talking about it, right? And whoever's listening, maybe it's going to help them on some level. Maybe it'll help them discover the terrain model, or, Marisol Arce, or Dr. Nita, or Soa Rigpa school, Asclepian dream incubation, so there's so many layers to what we can learn. And also, discovering the terrain of the soul, like what's inside of us. Why are we here? And why is this shit show happening? Right? Is the chaos, in Greek, chaos is actually the darkness, that comes before a new creation, right? It's part of creation. So is it really bad? Is anything really bad? I even talk about my son's death as a gift. It's helped me awaken. It's helped me deepen. I went to Bhutan after he passed. I met Dr. Nita, and I'm deepening. And there's what's called post-traumatic growth. You guys heard about that, right? And so I actually wrote about it before Justin passed. I have a few books coming called The Secrets of the Golden Shadow. And so we're not suffering, just this is not happening randomly.
Mhm.
Right? This is happening for us, to help us discover who we really are, and to bring us back to, what's pure and wholesome, And so my son wrote a book. He wrote an autobiography, and it's very terrain, like I read it 3 or 4 times before I finally heard the mission statement in there. And it's actually in the first chapter. And he wrote, I believe that how I have lived and what I have learned might help other people. Okay. Is this a visual also, or is this just audio? Because I have a picture I wanted to
Oh,
show
please
you.
hold it up.
So this is Justin. There's a little bit of a reflection
Oh, I
there.
see him.
He's in South Korea at that time. He's actually sitting in front of Kukiwon World Headquarters. He got to train with Olympic Taekwondo people, and he loved South Korea. He just loved it there, and he always wanted to go back. So he was actually with a group of black belts. He was still a Poom belt, which is the old system. I don't know if they call it Poom anymore, but he was just under black belt when he was when we were there, and so yeah, I mean, he dedicated his life to teaching Taekwondo to little kids, the discipline and the spirituality. And he wrote about that in his book. He interviews Dr. Arce in his book. And it's like just amazing. He talks about the difference between homeschooling and public school. He had gone to Montessori up until 4th grade, and then he actually wanted to try public school, and he was in public school for 3 months, and then we pulled him out because he hated it. And he wrote about it. But, it's like it's brilliant because he actually can speak from experience, right? That he was in there for a little while. And it was like and then we pulled him out, we unschooled him for a whole year just to kind of get him back into, like, loving
Yeah,
learning.
the palate cleanser.
Exactly. Exactly.
Melanie,
And
is
then
is is
he just loved homeschooling.
is his book available?
It's in the process where we're in the layout phase, so, it should be out where are we? We're in March, early March. It should be out, I would say, definitely by mid-April, maybe sooner. Um, it's an emotional thing for me. It's been 2 years, and he definitely I know he wanted it published because some people ask me, like, "Why are you publishing it?" And I'm like, "Well, because he has a mission."
Yeah.
He wants to help people, and he wrote about his experience, and, it was a homeschool writing project because he was doing creative writing, all through the pandemic and through the lockdown, and it's very interesting how it all manifests, right? Because a lot of his writings I found through his email back and forth between him and his writing tutor that I would not have found if we were not doing online learning because of the lockdown.
Everything feeds in, doesn't it?
Everything feeds in, and, you know, this documentary that's being done, it started in Greece. We were actually told just a month before the retreat that it was gonna be filmed as a documentary. And it's a docu-series of ancient wisdom and the hero's journey and how we're all going through, this hero's journey, right? And how we can use ancient wisdom to heal. So the teacher that was leading the retreat in Greece was, being filmed. He's like in his late 70s, and it's like you don't know how much longer he's going to be doing this. So it was this rare opportunity, but we didn't know until right before that it was going to be filmed. And the filmmaker comes on this group Zoom meeting, and he says, "Hey, everybody, I'm going to be there. I'm doing this documentary. This is what it's about. But if you don't want to be in it, I totally respect that. But if you do, great. And if you even want to help, could really use some help." And there was like crickets. Like nobody wanted to help. And then Justin unmutes himself in the Zoom meeting and he says, "I will help you." And so while we're in Greece, the filmmaker's father dies back home in New Hampshire. And where it's like it was a full moon. I got a picture of him like under this super full moon in Athens right before his dad dies. And then he falls into this like depression. And it was Justin and we had spent a couple of days with him because we went to Greece a little early. We went up to Delphi. We went to like the Oracle of Delphi and Apollo's temple together. And he's got all this footage of Justin up there. It's like amazing. And so he became close with Justin, and Justin they became like friends. My son was very mature for a 15-year-old. He was an only child. He was homeschooled. He grew up around mystics and shamans and Buddhist masters. Like, he just was this mature kid. And so he and the filmmaker became very close. And then we get home 7 weeks later, Justin dies. And the filmmaker is just like freaking out because now he's just got a 1-2 punch. And so he said, "We have to do a documentary about Justin." And I was like, "Okay." Because this documentary is like he's documenting like indigenous people in the Hudson Valley and Africa and Greece and then like Justin, you know? So it's called Tragical. And it's actually a word that slipped out of my mouth one day when a friend of mine asked, like, "How are you doing? How is it going?" And I was like, it's been tragical." And she said, "What?" And I said, "What?" And I'm like, I do that sometimes. I put words together, and I said, I meant to say it's been tragic and magical
Mm.
because of everything that I was learning and all of the signs and synchronicities, and these emails started popping up of I found an email from 2020 during the lockdown that my son had sent to his writing tutor, and it was when he was in the creative writing stage. And I got this like Gmail notification of my storage was full and I had to delete some emails. So I'm on my phone, I'm going back, and I go all the way back to 2020, and I'm like, delete, 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 delete. And I'm like deleting fast. And then suddenly I see an email from Justin, and I had it marked to delete it. And I was like, oh shit, like, let me undelete. I don't want to delete this, because it was like a month after he passed. So I wanted to like save everything. And I open it, or at first I see in the subject line, it was called Life Between the Lives is the subject line. And I'm like, what? So I open it, and this is in his autobiography. It's a short story of how he dies, and he leaves his body. He sees his dead body, and he's walking through the hospital,
Come on.
right? And he's shocked, and he decides, because Justin was very playful, he decides to like start messing with people, and he walks up to someone and says, boo, and like scares the person. And then he's leaving the hospital, and he goes to a candy store, which is actually there. There's a candy store right at the exit of the hospital. Now, he's never been to a hospital. So not that hospital, I should say. He had been to a hospital when he had a reaction when he was 2 months old. But he nailed that he died in a hospital. He nailed that it was sudden. And he's talking like a kid going to a candy store, right? And then he talks in the story about being on the news, which he was on social media news. And there was just, I mean, we had hundreds of people. We did this online ceremony for him, and hundreds of people logged on, but there were prayers going around like the whole world, because I have a huge spiritual community. Like there were people in India praying for him. Like it was, all over. But what really shocked the shit out of me was that the last line of his little story was that he went home. So he went to the candy store at the hospital. He went home. He turns on the TV, saw that he was in the news, changes the news channel to watch football. And he loved football. That was actually why he wanted to go to public school. And he did. He played football at public school and then left. So good for him. um, he turned the channel to watch football, and he says the Arizona Cardinals were playing the LA. Oh shoot, was it LA
Rams, maybe?
Rams.
Well, that was his favorite team, but no. So 49ers or something. So here we go again. A couple months later, it occurs to me, I want to look up what football teams were playing the night of December 17th. Because that is the night that I believe he died. Even though we unplugged him on the morning of the 19th,
Yep.
I always felt like he died on the 17th. Like he died during the surgery. There was a huge storm, lightning, thunder. And I remember 60-mile-an-hour winds. It was so weird. And I remember saying, I feel like the skies are opening up to welcome him home. So that Sunday night, December 17th, you can look it up for yourself. The Arizona, what are they called? Arizona Cardinals were playing a California team. He got the California team wrong, but he got that it was a California team. And so he wrote this creative story 3.5 years before his death. So yeah, it makes you think. Then you're rubbing your head, right? It's just like mind-blowing. So I believe, I am a questioner, right? I do believe that there are kids, there are people that are here on the planet that are here to help us
Mm.
wake up. So that is just the tip of the iceberg.
Yeah.
So he wrote a book, and then I wrote a book after, and then we have this documentary. Um, and my book is full of the magic, right? I mean, what perfect of a word, tragical, right? From tragic to magic, and what this is meant to teach us and reveal to us. I'm still unpacking it.
I doubt you'll ever stop unpacking. I mean, I think that's what a parent lives for the rest of their lives when they lose someone, when they lose their child. I mean, my parents lost two sons. So both my brothers, uh, my older brother Josh passed when we were in high school. He was in his senior year, and was a year and a half battle with cancer, brain cancer. So my parents went through this. It wasn't sudden. It was a long journey, but
Mm,
I've witnessed them devote their lives to honoring and remembering their lost children. And what first, I don't want I just need to say thank you for for coming on and sharing this. Like, this is the gift. This is the gift, and you are extending that gift to everyone out there. Because what I find remarkable is that this perspective, and it is a worldview. This is the nature of our reality. This perspective allows a person to go through the hardest challenges in life. And there's nothing I don't think harder than losing a loved one. And so, this perspective that you have, Melanie, that you're sharing with us, perspective that is informed by the loss of your child, but clearly you also had prior to the loss of your child, allows you to do what you're doing, which is integrate this loss and turn it into something magical and show us, reveal the gift that it is. And there's this fine line between loving something, loving someone so much that you can never imagine them leaving. And no parent should bury their child. That's the saying that you hear. And having this perspective that death is not to be feared, that this is part of the soul contract. It's this fine line between it so that you can grieve and you feel that loss as you always will, but also know that time is the construct experienced by the physical body. And if we are infinite consciousness, is there extra grief to be had because a child dies as opposed to a 90-year-old? You look at it and go, this is simply the journey that they had to have, that they were here for. The time aspect is almost meaningless, even though as a parent, you want nothing more than to see your child grow up and fall in love and get married and have children and provide grandchildren. It's this fine line because you can't become nihilistic. You still are grounded by that love and that desire to see your children grow. But then you have this wonderful perspective that this is what they were here for. And how do I turn this brief life and sudden death into something that stretches far beyond the burying of your child?
I agree completely. Yeah, pain when I didn't want to live anymore. I did not see a reason for me to be on this planet anymore. I mean, he was my world, especially talk about attachment, which is, what the Buddha taught as the cause of suffering, right?
Exactly.
I knew there were a couple of thoughts that came through after Justin passed, and, I'm so grateful for my spiritual path. And I had been surrounded by some really amazing scholars and masters and healers that actually all came into my life because of Justin. It was like he was connecting me to who I was going to need to have this beautiful net to catch me and all that I had learned before his passing. Actually, the psychic medium said in a chuckle, he said, Justin is telling me he trained you for this. So, I have to look at my own soul contract of what I agreed to, right? And so, yes, I'm extremely grateful for having walked a spiritual path, but as a mother who lost a child, it just ripped me. And I did not want to live. And my Buddhist teacher, my mentor, that I've known for many years, just gave me that instruction to meditate and sit in the pain, to let the pain become my teacher. And what I found by sitting with the pain, first I had to feel it and let it move through me, which is what our culture really needs to learn to do, right? We have this aversion to discomfort. And all of my meditation training, in a style of meditation called shamatha, which actually teaches you to just sit and be, right? And be with everything that comes up. And what comes up is everything you've repressed. And that can be from the dark shadow or the golden shadow, I call it, right? So you can get amazing creative epiphanies. Um, One of my Buddhist teachers actually, from doing nothing in meditation, ended up writing a Grammy Award winning song. This was in the 70s. Is it the Grammys? Yeah, it's the Grammys, right? For music. Did I get that right? I always mix it up. So a lot of positive can come out of nothing, but we have to learn how to sit in discomfort and build the mental strength. And because I had been training as a Buddhist practitioner and also teaching meditation, we call it like taking the mind to the gym, right? So you go to the physical gym, you get big muscles so that you can lift things when the time comes and you need that strength, right? You're like, oh, let me lift that for you, right? Because you've been working out, you can do it. That's why I call my husband for that, right? But I have this mental strength, right, that a lot of people don't have when it comes to, this kind of trauma and loss. And even with that mental strength and all of the support around me, I still wanted to kill myself, you know. But I was able to snap out of that because I was like, "Oh, wait a minute, right view." Right? Like Justin's still here. He's not really dead. Right? So that was very helpful, but I still had to feel the pain of that physical, that not having that physical Justin anymore, my beautiful son, that I wanted to see, get married and, have kids, and I wanted grandchildren and all of that. So all of that was gone. It was like boom. And so from a Buddhist perspective, and I want to just say, Buddhism is not a religion. And even Buddhists argue over this. But from the view that I have been taught and my teachers is Buddha was a scientist and a doctor. He studied mind and he studied habitual patterns of mind, right? We as scientists, you study, you observe, and you look at patterns. And that's what Buddha did, right? And so meditation is considered medicine, right? To get to know yourself and to get to know the patterns of your mind. What are your thoughts? What are you thinking? And what are you creating with those thoughts? So, from a Buddhist point of view, attachment is one of the cause of suffering. So, one of my first thoughts after Justin passed was, oh, he's teaching me about non attachment. This is the greatest teaching of all. And what a gift it is to, Justin was a gamer. He loved video games and he was gonna go into graphic design, but, he went to this sleepaway camp the summer before he passed, and it was called Camp Level Up. And it was the first of its kind, and he got, like, this certificate, a founding member certificate. And before he passed, he was like, "Where's my certificate?" He was, like, freaking out, and Justin didn't freak out over anything. "Where's my certificate? I wanna frame it." And I was like, "I don't know. Where is it?" And, like, we couldn't find it. And he was like, "We gotta find it." And I said, "Well, we can just call the camp and get another one." And he was like, "No, we have to find it." So after he passed, that stuck in my head. And I found the certificate and I framed it. And I'm sitting in his bedroom meditating. And my eyes go to this framed certificate on the wall that says Camp Level Up. And the thought comes into my mind. And it was Justin. And he's like, I died to help you level up. And I was like, okay, all right. I don't like this at all, but okay.
Yeah.
Right. And so I have a lot of stories. I can go on and on, but I just want to
Well, let's
see
pause.
how
I
you
want to
guys
make sure, Mike, you can jump in.
I'm just kind of beside myself over here. I would want to reiterate what Ben said. I'm humbled and honored that you would share this with us on our show. I mean, truly, it's one of the most emotional stories I've ever heard. Um, yeah, it's. I have to admit, I've been very curious to hear this story because you were on the show in 2023, and we did hear the news. And it's funny because we call it a terrain family, right? There are Telegram groups, terrain family. We're all in this space as terrain aware people, educators, practitioners. Um, so I do feel like you're family to me, even though we've never met in person. You also live in the Hudson Valley, not far from where I live. Um, but there's also, when someone's going through something, you have to honor their process. And like I said, we've never met in person. We don't know each other well. So I wanted to give you your space and not intrude. Um, so I'm just honored that the time is right now to receive this story from you and to see your remarkable journey through it all, because I've been very curious. So just thank you from the bottom of my heart. Like Ben said, you know, um, he lost his older brother Josh, who I was close with. He lost his younger brother Nate, who was one of my brother's best friends. Ben and I are family in that way, in that we've gone through a lot together. And you've reminded me, and I've told this story in dozens of interviews. Um, what gave me the courage to live an artist's life as a musician was really when Josh passed. And I've said it over and over again. That was the moment I realized how precious and fleeting life can be, an unfair feeling, and that I better damn well do something that I want to do with my life. And so that was the lead into gold moment for me. That was the alchemy. And I didn't have the terminology as a teenager to see it as I see it now. So I just want to thank you again for that reminder and how that process has played out in my own life, to both of you, really. And I'm just really honored to be in this seat right now. So thank you.
Yeah,
thank you
thanks,
for
Mike.
sharing that. Yeah. Yeah. A lot of people after Justin passed did things that they had been putting off. And this is, my husband and I are going to Bhutan in October this year, and we're bringing all of Justin's ashes to this. It's the second most sacred site in the Far East. The first is the crematorium next to Bodh Gaya, where the Buddha attained enlightenment. And this second site, I had been there and I had had just a small amount of ashes with me. And we were with Dr. Nita and about 40 other people. And it was just an amazing, magical experience of what unfolded there. And I knew standing at this river, at this crematorium where a lot of Buddhist masters had been cremated or had sat and done meditation, this river was considered a power place. And I found out later it was the second most sacred site. And I knew that that was where my son's ashes needed to go. And so we're bringing, when I told the filmmaker that we were going, he was like, I have to go. And at first I was like, no, this is private. This is
Yeah.
for me and my husband. This is closure. And then like within a week, I hear Justin, and I do, part of studying metaphysics, you open up these channels to be able to communicate. And I've never wanted to communicate with the dead, but when you have a child on the other side, you want to communicate with them. So there's a way to do it safely and to make sure that you're raising your vibration you're in your heart and in this love vibration, right? You don't want to try to connect when you're grieving and you're in pain, because that's a low vibration. And then you're going to attract other low vibrations. So you're not going to actually connect. I have to raise my vibration to where my son is, right? So to come into my heart and imagine, and feel love, and then I can start to connect with him. And then now he just kind of comes through, like he drops little, what I've learned from other psychic mediums, they're called beacons.
Hmm.
Like there's these thoughts that come in, and I realize I'm being guided by my son. And so within a week of the filmmaker saying that, I get this voice in my head of like, no, you need to bring Joe. He's the documentarian. And this needs to be filmed. And this is not really about me. It's like Justin's the catalyst. He's like, this is not really about me. This is about Bhutan is known as the happiest country in the world because they contemplate death every day.
Yeah.
And not in like a morbid kind of way, but in this like reality of like, it can happen at any time. And how contemplating that, right? Like if you asked yourself, if I was just told that I only had a month left to live, what would I do? What would I do different? How would I live different? What would I say? Like, are there things that are unsaid that need to be said to people? And all of that starts to clear your life, right? It's like you're not holding on to, there's more forgiveness, there's more love, there's more of doing what you really came here to do, right? All of a sudden, that bucket list is like front and center. Nothing else matters. And so, if we lived that way, all the time, and they live that way in Bhutan, it's like the culture of the country. Can you imagine if in the West, right, here in the United States, if our culture shifted to have that kind of level of appreciation for life? We wouldn't be just like trying to make money, just a paycheck. It would be like very heart centered. There would be a lot more art. Bhutan is like one of the most gorgeous countries. It's so creative. They build everything by hand. They're building, like the airport is built by hand, and then it's got these gorgeous, flowers and tigers and lions and dragons, all like these beautiful pastel type colors that are outlined in gold, right? Like it radiates. It's such a high vibration. So going there, and I agreed, I was like, said to the documentarian, I was like, okay, Justin's telling me to let you come, and that this is about community, right? This is about sharing, the ancient wisdom of this Far East country that's called the happiest country in the world. And how can it help us here in the West, where we're living with this very reductionist, materialistic view, And so we're here, right? We're on like the foot like of the golden age, right? And so of course we are here now to help that movement, right? So this tragical, the documentary, I'm hoping, will reach worldwide. That's our goal. We're still crowdfunding, and waiting for, we believe that all of the it's all worked out already,
Yes.
like it's already done for us,
Yeah. That's how you manifest, right? That's how you manifest.
yes.
Yeah.
But there was one other comment that I wanted to make sure I shared. There was another thought that came through when Justin passed, and that first thought of like, he's teaching me about non-attachment. But there was another thought that came through that was really kind of amazing. I started off as a psychotherapist, and I was able to extract myself from working for someone else. And I had started my own little private practice. I had this tiny little office that was, cheap couch, and it was like I was just getting started. And one of my first patients that came in was this like 20-something-year-old guy from Pakistan. which is interesting because Tibetan Buddhism, actually, they say, was brought to like Bhutan and Tibet and India from Pakistan. So I just thought that that was really interesting. That my first patient, and this patient that I think of after Justin died, was from Pakistan. He didn't talk much. He was diagnosed with schizophrenia. His parents were with him, and his parents were telling me how he had jumped off the Tappan Zee Bridge and tried to kill himself. And he broke his neck. And here he was in front of me, like walking, talking. I never would have known any of that had happened. And I turned to him and I said, well, God has a plan for you, because no one survives that. And so it works both ways, right? Like there are people who walk out of a situation where they should have died. And then with Justin, there was nothing we could do to stop it. And so doesn't it work the same way where God has a plan for him? Right?
I think
So
that's a worldview. That's an acceptance of there are no coincidences and everything happens for a reason. And I think that it's a lot for folks to arrive at that. I think in our culture, what I observe, particularly among folks who might be self declared or proclaimed atheists, that there is no reason. There's no reason to anything. It's all just chaos. It's all just random. And I have a lot of sympathy for those folks because I prefer to live in the existence that I'm in, this worldview that I believe you share too, that there's a reason for everything, even the most tragic loss. There's something to be learned, not just by you, but by the world. And there's such comfort. I find there's such comfort and reassurance. And you can get up the next day and go, okay, well, what now? What am I meant to do now? It's just how I prefer. I prefer to live that way. I can't imagine not living that way. I suppose that events in my own life have almost forced me to adopt that view, because if I didn't, I don't know, like you, I might not be here. I might have chosen, what's the point?
well, we are here on this earth to experience contrast, right? So there's always going to be people who will not believe, right? And that's free will.
It's free will.
And totally respect that.
Correct.
And I was at that point, I was there,
Same.
in my 20s. But nothing teaches you better than experience.
Yeah.
And we can always change. And you might believe a certain way, today, but experience can change that tomorrow.
Melanie, you've mentioned infinite consciousness. Do you believe that we are all part of a collective consciousness?
Well, that's the other part of right view, is that because we're all energy, right? You can't separate energy.
Yep.
So part of right view is not just your infinite energy consciousness, but we're interconnected and interdependent, right? So there really is no Ben or Mike or Melanie, right? And oh, I almost forgot. This is a great story. So I asked Justin, and this is after he passed, having that mindset of everything happens for a reason. I asked him, so why get kicked in the stomach? Why did it start that way? Right? If it all has meaning. And then I suddenly started to hear from several people who don't know each other that when I talked about how Justin passed, they said, oh, that's how Houdini died. He got punched in the stomach.
That's right.
And I was like, I never heard that before. Okay. And so I started to meditate and ask Justin, what do you and Houdini have in common? Why are you why is this happening? Why is there this connection? And I wasn't getting an answer. And I went to sleep one night and with really strong intention. I was like, all right, Justin, I really want to know what's the connection between you and Houdini. And can you please give me the answer while I'm sleeping? So I wake up the next morning with the first thought, look up Houdini and what he was known for. So I just do Google, what is Houdini known for? And what comes up is master of illusions. And I hear a little voice in my head say, teach people about illusions. So this is an illusion, right? We're energy. We're not a solid body. We're not really this face or this name, right? This is just like here 1 second and gone the next, right? You've had infinite faces and bodies and parents and spouses and children. There's been so many experiences. And, I say it's all stored in like the iCloud. That's the collective unconscious to me is iCloud. And so that's how we come in with certain knowings and certain talents, right? And we've also come in with certain negative habits, right? So we are drawing our karma from past lives. We're also drawing upon our ancestors, all of our experiences. They're all interconnected. Nothing is separate.
I find that worldview, that understanding of the nature of reality, strips judgment away from anything you do, any encounter you have with any other human, any other individual, in quotes. You no longer can judge them. And even if the interaction is aggression towards you, someone flipping you off in traffic, it doesn't matter what it is. Every single individual becomes a teacher because you're all connected. You're all trying to inform and spiritually ascend. There's some experience. Every experience becomes informing you on your journey, and they are all just a part of you. Therefore, you are all just being informed of through this human experience. It's an incredible way to live. If you can sit and meditate and every morning just remind yourself, this is what it is. And you no longer go through your day with any judgment towards anyone. What a gift, right? What a gift that is.
Yes. No judgment, no aggression, right? You hit someone or you curse someone out. It's just, you're doing that to yourself. Right? So yeah, that's what we call the right view.
That's the right view.
Which leads to right speech and right action and living a life that is full of wisdom and compassion.
Yeah.
Right? What you do to others, you do to yourself.
Yeah. Melanie, if there are folks out there who are also suffering a loss of any kind, like what is one piece of advice you would offer them?
To be with your pain, to love it. Like it's loving yourself, right? We're here to learn how to love, and it starts with ourselves. And if you can let pain be your teacher, the way that I was told by my teacher to let pain be my teacher, what I found in the pain was that my heart just broke open. And to let our hearts break open, to let the love come through, right? And to love yourself by just giving yourself time, like slow down and feel. Because if you don't feel it, it's going to make you sick, right? Most people who have actually had a child loss do develop some kind of illness. Luckily, I'm very healthy. But I feel it. I give myself, time to cry, time to release, time to go through all of the stories, right? And then I pull back and I see how, those stories, I have a choice. One of my other teachers told me, don't look at photos of Justin after 12 noon. Because I did one night and I was up all night crying. And so, it's that attachment. It's like, I wish he was still here in this body, right? But he is here. Actually, the book that I'm writing is called I Am Here, Messages from Justin Bodie, right? So be with the pain. And, in those moments, you may find something opens. But we have to love ourselves enough to just stop running. So many of my friends were like, just keep busy, just stay busy. What do you want to do? It was like everyone wanted to make me busy and they thought that that was helping. And I appreciate that. But I knew different. I knew I needed to not be busy and I didn't want to talk to a lot of people. I surrounded myself with wisdom. And this can be the opportunity for you, and I'm talking to the audience, right? For you to explore a spiritual path. This may be the invitation, and maybe, you go to a meditation class, or maybe you consult with a psychic medium. You have to be super careful about that, though. I will warn people, you know, we had our recommendation from the Omega Institute in Rhinebeck like years ago. And this particular psychic medium, he was born a psychic medium. He'd been doing it for 40 years. He didn't even have to train. And he's highly gifted. And that really brought so much healing for me and my family. And an understanding of who my son was in his past lives. And then I consulted with a lot of different people, and it was very interesting to see, various psychics, mediums, shamans, all saying the same thing. That was cool.
Yes. Consistency.
That's my science mind.
Yes.
Right? Like, how does that happen? How are all these people saying the same thing and they don't even know each other?
Yeah. Reproducible results. Yeah.
So, but again, just be with your pain. And in little increments, in a way that you feel safe. I am starting to move into supporting people in this way. I needed my time. And now it's like, I feel like I'm meant to come out and start sharing more. And his book is coming out, and his book is really going to help people. Like, it's like how to live. It's like almost like a template of like a terrain kind of life, that parents can read, especially parents who are like maybe on the fence about homeschooling. It's like, it's really an amazing book. And then I write the ending of it because, he writes up until coming home from Greece. And then I write about, what unfolded and a little bit about what I'm learning, and then segueing into this next book. But, there's a lot of suffering right now. And, suffering is to cultivate wisdom. And we can see that in our own lives, because you can look back and be like, wow, look at what I've gone through and what I've learned from it. Right? Even if you're an atheist, you can look back on your life and see how, you grow, from adversity. And I don't like to say that anything bad has happened. I like to say that challenging things have happened.
I look forward to your next book too. When's that slated to come out?
Which book?
Yeah, right. You've got a couple going, right?
So yeah, there's the autobiography of Justin Bodie. That's
imminent.
my son's book that he wrote. And then there's the one that I'm working on, which are actually messages, all the signs and synchronicities from the afterlife from him. And then before he passed, for about 3 years, I wrote the Golden Shadow Method and I published that. And that is going into the shadows, both dark and golden, pointing out how we repress a lot of positive things. Like, your choice to just pick up the guitar and start creating music. It was right there, right? Like, it's just a choice. Like, oh, I'm going to go take that art class. I'm going to go take that pottery class or that painting class. Like, it's just literally making that choice. So the golden shadow is always right there. And then the dark shadow is the trickier part that we have to transmute and we have to go in, but also appreciate the wisdom of it. So 3 books that I wrote after the Golden Shadow Method, which you can find that on Amazon, are a series of books called The Secrets of the Golden Shadow. And the first one that I am publishing of that series is called Triggers Are Treasures. And it is the view. So here's the right view. We need to see triggers as our allies. They are a built-in healing mechanism that is going to point you right to what you have repressed. And again, you can repress positive. So there are golden shadow triggers. And I'll just share, it's so simple because truth is simple. Golden shadow trigger number 1, do what excites you. A trigger is energy, right? It's an intense energy. And excitement is an intense energy in a positive way. We're so addicted to the negative. But the golden shadow is like, let's look at the whole thing.
Yeah.
Energy, right? Is coming up from the unconscious. You're excited. Go do it.
That's a performance trick as well. A lot of beginning performers say, I'm so nervous. And you can just transmute that to say, well, that's the same feeling as being excited. You're also just excited. Like, oh yeah, I am excited. Exactly. You just flip the switch. Yeah. Yeah, go on.
Yeah. So the one that people want to avoid are these dark shadow triggers, right? Well, we actually avoid the golden shadow too, but we this view of the whole trigger warning, don't say that, right? And it's like we have to develop this new view of triggers being treasures, that they are keys. They're the keys. And so they open to these portals within the unconscious that are there to help us become whole and live our life without these blocks, right? So the dark shadow triggers do develop as they're like symptoms, right? And you guys know from terrain model, right? Symptoms are just manifestations that are there to help you heal, like to consider them messengers, right? So a trigger is a messenger. It's a teacher. It's built in to say, hey, there's something in here that you've repressed, that wants to come out.
And again, it's that aversion to discomfort we spoke about earlier.
Exactly.
That's baked into the culture. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So going in and also sitting with your pain, right? So I've developed a whole method of transmuting triggers, these dark shadow triggers that involve meditation, because instead of reacting, you want to reflect. You want to own your trigger instead of blaming and saying, you triggered me. It's changing the whole language of, I am triggered. And something inside of me has gotten activated that I repressed. And it's now time to heal it, transmute it, and integrate it, right? So it's a whole thing. My background is Jungian psychology, Buddhism, shamanic, indigenous wisdom, and metaphysics, right? So these books have actually evolved to another level. I didn't get to publish them because Justin passed. So it kind of put everything on halt. And now it's evolved even more and it's gotten more refined. And I'll be teaching workshops on it. I'm teaching at the Omega Institute in August this year. Transmuting triggers there'll be a section on transmuting triggers as part of that retreat. But I also teach it online. I do a lot of trigger work with people. And a big piece of that is helping people understand what projection is, that we're projectors, right? Because remember, this is an illusion. The movie projector is right here, our mind. And what we're projecting is the unconscious all the time, right? And so things are happening, they're manifesting to actually wake us up. So, like when you have a pattern that keeps happening in your life, that's a negative pattern, that's your unconscious projecting. So we have to go in and purify. It's like a cleansing, it's a purification of the unconscious. We have to clean it out because just like we know with physical toxins, right, they accumulate. And then after 4 or 5 months, you'll become symptomatic, you'll get sick, which is also a healing mechanism. Same thing with triggers is your emotional toxins are accumulating, right? And so when it gets to a certain point, this trigger or these patterns will keep manifesting and you'll just finally get tired of it. And it's like, what is this? Maybe you'll go to therapy or you'll go to a healer and you'll go in and you'll be like, I'm triggered all the time. And then it presents this opportunity for healing and actually going in and cleaning out some of those emotional and mental toxins that you've accumulated. So purification is what the Golden Shadow Method is all about, and these books that I'm writing. And it, draws on all of these ancient wisdom traditions that I'm pulling together that I've learned for the past 20 years.
Remarkable. I cannot wait until those are available.
Thank you. Thank you. And I just yesterday I opened my own publishing company. So I decided, this whole thing, giving away our stuff to publishing companies, it's not necessary. So I just opened one yesterday with the state of Georgia. Actually, I'm in Georgia now.
Amen.
We moved to the Blue Ridge Mountains in Georgia. We live in a little cedar cabin, and we've got a gorgeous mountain view. Where some people are coming and doing some private retreats here with us. Just couples and small families we're hosting right now. So we're still getting settled. We've been here for 7 months now, and so so big changes, and really my husband and I both, we want to share what we've been through. We're both very open. My husband's a pain specialist, a body worker. He's actually going to be at Omega this August. We're teaching on the same weekend, but different workshops.
Yeah. And what weekend is that? Do you know off the top of your head?
Yeah, actually, it's out now. It's August 21st to 23rd at the Omega Institute. They just put it up online, and I think their Omega does this nice catalog that you can go to their website and have the catalog mailed to you. But yeah, you can officially sign up. Registration just opened. So, a lot of good things are happening, and lots of books will be coming. And we're here to help. We're here to share and our human experience and who we are as spiritual beings.
Yeah, we are all better for it, Melanie. Your willingness to come on and share this incredible story, incredible journey of yours. We truly are.
Thank you for having me. And it's I'm kind of, being pushed to share. It's like, this is what I'm here for.
This is what you're here for. Yeah, that much is abundantly clear. and thank God you're listening.
And the more you share, the more gold we have to show for it.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, guys. We've all gone through so much suffering. We're in the same boat,
Yeah, well.
And we're all doing our best. And I think if we can keep in mind that we're all in this together.
Agreed. Yeah, there is no separation. Melanie,
No.
let's bring this incredible flight in for a landing.
Yeah.
Most people answer this question through the lens of the physical, but I suspect this time around you might go beyond that. We asked you this 3 years ago, so I am curious to see how this changes for you. But what are your non-negotiables these days? The daily habits that you do to tend your terrain.
Well, I'll say there's a physical answer and a spiritual answer. So right now, I am deep into studying the Sowa Rigpa, which is the Tibetan medicine, and it also includes Vajrayana Buddhism, which is a level of Buddhism that's about transformation. And part of my commitment to the Vajrayana Buddhist path is the physical practice of what's called prostrations. Maybe you've seen them, where you put your arms up above your head and then your third eye, your heart, and then you go down to the ground and you put your head to the earth and then you go full out flat on the earth. And it's an act of reverence to nature, but a renunciation of yourself, right? It's humility and then coming back up. So in the practice called Nundro, you have to do 100,000 prostrations. 100,000. So yeah, if I do 300 a day, it will take me a year
Okay.
to do it.
Okay.
So my physical practice is to do my prostrations as many as I can throughout the whole day, right? And so waking up and doing that after I have my glass of raw milk, of course. Um, and then I spend time in meditation, and sometimes it may be in shamatha meditation to calm my mind, right? To just keep coming back to the feeling of the body breathing and let thoughts come in and let them go, right? And to let the mind, just settle and get grounded in my body and in my thoughts. Um, or I might do a meditation, to Justin. And also I have, a couple of other guides, a Tibetan teacher that's on the other side. That's been a guide for me for a couple of decades now. And my son and he seem to be together now, which is very interesting how that's evolving. So I always, I do those three things. I have, do my prostrations, my raw milk, and my meditation. And now that I have this beautiful view, like I can do it outside, and and so that's my non-negotiable for my morning practice. And I don't usually talk to anyone. My husband and I, and even when Justin was around, we were not people that none of us really wanted to talk in the morning. So silence, starting my day off in silence for at least like an hour or two. I don't really like to talk to anyone before 10 a.m.
It's a good rule for you.
Yeah.
Melanie, feel free to throw your own books in here, but we've started asking this question to all our guests, and that is, what are some go-to book recommendations for the listener who just wants to learn more about some of what we talked about today?
Yeah, well, my thing is it's very holistic because it's not just the terrain of the body, it's the terrain of your mind, right? And walking into your mind every day. So in Buddhism, we read every day. There's some kind of reading, and then there's some kind of reflection and meditation, because you're filling yourself with wisdom, right? And our parents don't always carry wisdom, our friends that we grew up with, so we're teaching ourselves wisdom. So right now I actually I'll show you this big fat book. This is Dr. Nita's Foundations of Sowa Rigpa, and this is just on naturopathic. This is like terrain medicine right here, but from Tibet. and the Himalayas. So if anyone is interested in that, and then he's got a book this size, 700-page book that he just published on the introduction to Vajrayana Buddhism, which again is about transformation. And there's meditations in there where it's like you're meditating to the medicine Buddha, right? And there's different Buddhas. Medicine Buddha holds a bowl of medicine. It's herbs. And you can integrate, you can, read about Medicine Buddha, and you can, sort of integrate yourself. A lot of naturopathic doctors out there might resonate with this kind of archetype of Medicine Buddha, right? Because he was the doctor. So I would recommend, studying some kind of Buddhist philosophy. Pema Chodron is a really amazing American Buddhist teacher. And she writes these little books, that are really quick and easy to read or to travel with. She was an American. She was actually, I think, a kindergarten teacher. And she came to Buddhism because like her husband, they got divorced, and there was like a lot of trauma around that. And a lot of people end up, coming to Buddhism because it's studying suffering. It's the study of suffering, and it's the study of liberation of suffering. So I think that, any books by Pema Chodron is her name, her Buddhist given name. You can find them out there. She's really popular, and she's super funny. She's really funny and down to earth. And the chapters are really small and easy to chew on, and digest. So, yeah, I'm kind of in that mindset right now of really recommending, books that are of the Buddhist nature. My other favorite book in metaphysics, actually, right now is, you guys familiar with Louise Hay? Really? Oh, so Louise Hay healed herself from stage 4 cancer by actually talking to her cancer cells. And she talks about, and this is kind of along the lines of Buddhism, of like, what are your thoughts? So she talks about thought patterns and how those thought patterns create symptoms in your body, and how there's a book called You Can Heal Your Life that has a chart in it, and it'll say like any symptom, like a cyst or a sty on your eye or a sinus infection or a wart. And it will go across the chart and tell you your thought pattern that's creating that symptom.
Okay.
So she's connecting the metaphysical cause to physical manifestations, right? Metaphysics is like, meta means like beyond,
Yeah.
right? So thoughts are energy, and then energy, manifests. So everyone needs to check those Louise Hay, because I've used it for over 15 years. And I often, even as a psychotherapist, I would ask my students and my clients, about their sickness or symptoms. And we would look it up in the book, and I would ask them, have you been having this thought? Does this resonate? And like 99.9% of the time they would say, oh my God, yeah, that's my story. And then she gives a new thought pattern to how to reverse it.
It's amazing.
And so you can look her up on YouTube, Louise Hay, like the whole Hay House publishing company is named after her, right? She's huge.
Okay. I'm on it.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely
Who doesn't want to
recommend.
heal their life?
Exactly. Well, there might be a few who enjoy being sick.
That's true. Melanie, once again, for the listener, where can they learn more about you, follow your work, get in touch with you?
So I have goldenshadowmethod.com is a new website. And then, so all about the golden shadow and all of the different things that I offer around that are there. And then my husband and I have a website together called Ancient Wisdom Today. And even Justin has a page there. Because we also teach wilderness skills. I lead vision quests, dream incubations, I'm starting to contemplate offering dark retreats. If you've started to hear about those are becoming popular, that's a very ancient Buddhist practice. I'm all about like immersion, removing distractions and getting people into their unconscious. So ancientwisdomtoday.com. And then also just want to put out there that we've developed a website for justinbodhi.com. That's Bodhi, and all of his stuff there. But if you want to subscribe, we do a newsletter every so often. That's through ancientwisdomtoday.com. And all the websites will feed you to a newsletter. Sign up if you want to subscribe through Ancient Wisdom Today. And that's where the newsletter comes out of, and all of the announcements of books and documentaries and everything come out of there.
Got it. We'll put the links in the show notes.
Thank you so much.
Melanie Ryan, thank you for coming on and sharing this profound piece of your journey and your story and your son Justin's story. We appreciate it so deeply.
Thank you so much, guys. It's so good to be with you and share this with you. And, we've all, like I said, we've all been through so much. So I'm just sending you guys a big hug.
Back at you.
Thank you.